call the meeting of the HECC to order this morning. Thank you for being here. We will start with the roll call. Please go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. I will now call a roll. Andy Rowe.
Present.
Greg Hammond.
Present.
Natalie Arnott. Rukiah Adams. I know that Chair Adams indicated my phone. Let me just share your microphone. Apologies, Chair. I see some folks have just joined. I'm promoting them.
That's fine.
Continuing its role, Natalie Arnott, Kaya Adams, Rachel Bisco,
Here.
Terry Cross,
Here.
Richard Devlin,
Here.
Ellen Edwards, Arnell Fajardo, here, Evelyn Coker, Fernando Rojas Galvan,
Present.
Emily Simnett,
Present.
Mocha Thomas Apelli,
Present.
Gail Yamasaki.
Here.
That is roll chair.
Thank you very much. And I know some others are joining. Jeffrey told me we actually might expect to have 100% attendance, which would be great at some point in this meeting. If not, we'll be very close to it. So thank you all. We're going to move to minutes, and then I have some comments, some introductory comments after the approval of the minutes. Guthrie, can we do those both at the same time?
Absolutely.
Okay, these are the minutes from both our December meeting and from the special meeting in January. Are there any questions or concerns or corrections to the minutes? If not, I'm going to deem them approved. And we will move on. I think I can do that, can't I?
In the past, we've done a motion in a second.
Yeah, I think I.
You can do it.
Yeah.
You can do that
our
motion.
policy.
Okay.
I think you should get that.
Thank you. Motion, second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Thank you. We'll check the rules and see if I'm allowed to just do that. Not, that's fine. So I do have a few comments. First of all, I want to start with a few thank yous, and then I'm going to give a summary of the introductory sort of listening tour that Greg and I did, which was a lot of fun. And then I want to talk about a couple of things that, among a lot of them, that I place importance on. So the thank yous, first of all, although we thank you and said goodbye before Terry Cross and Helen Edwards, who I don't think is on yet, but we could never stop thanking you for two of you in different ways. You really have been extraordinary members. Their replacements don't yet, as commissioners, don't get approved until tomorrow. And so it also just once again shows the dedication to higher education in Oregon and to this group that when they're going to be approved by the Senate tomorrow, but Helen and Terry both came to this meeting to help us as we continue on strategic planning and have discussions. So thank you very much. I also want to thank all the commissioners. I believe we talked to everyone. I don't think we missed anyone. And these conversations, we had to do it by Zoom, but they were so enlightening and helpful to us and a lot of fun. Really felt like we both got to know you a little bit. You had a chance to ask us questions, and we certainly hope that that's paved the way that if at any time you have questions or concerns, that you don't hesitate to come to either one of us. As you saw, as we did that, Greg and I were acting as partners in that endeavor. And we will be doing that a lot on where it's appropriate, where it takes two of us to replace Terry Cross. But at any rate, we'll be working in partnership very closely as we do that. One of the things that you'll hear more about later, but maybe besides talking to you, the next thing we're partnering on is we have agreed to go to every community college and university campus We're gonna try to do them all this year. A few may go into next year. And we're doing that we'll have meetings with the president. It'll be one or the other of us. So that's how we're managing to do it. We're not saying doing it together. But we think that it will help us do our work better, help the commission do its work if we're able to have the familiarity of visiting each campus, of hearing from the president himself or herself, the concerns they have, the hopes they have for the university, and to hear about some of the key issues. So we start that actually, I think, at the first one next week at Western. So, we'll be talking to you and we'll be giving you updates on that. So that's done. Okay, in talking with you, some of the themes that came through were just some observations that are all going to be helpful in focusing our work, especially as we go forward on the strategic planning. So you expressed, first of all, a desire for greater clarity on our objectives. While the breadth of work and responsibility of commissioners and the commission is quite broad, there's some question of, okay, at different times, what's the value we're actually adding? And so we hope through strategic planning to be able to isolate that more, because we have to in order to focus on it. That's one thing. And the way that question was phrased by one of you is, how do we show our understanding of and act on some of the most vexing problems facing higher education? So you're going to hear that theme. We have to keep coming back. There's a real hunger for knowing more about what to do on workforce development, especially, of course, through the community colleges, and for understanding better, and I need this to understand better the distinction, and there is a distinction between workforce development and overall economic development. And you remember from the
landscape.
Yeah, the landscape report that the consultants there were saying Oregon really doesn't have an overall economic plan. So we need to understand that difference, try to figure out what our role is and who else has a role in that. You expressed a desire to lean in to data-driven decisions. Amy Cox, if you're listening, everybody wants even more data. I'm not the only one who loves data, but Commissioner Edwards described it very well. She described it as us needing a very clear narrative on most issues, supported with data and real expertise. And we have that a lot. We have a lot of the expertise in staff, and you'll see we'll be bringing in even more expertise. But our work should be, of course, driven by our goals and values, but informed by expertise and data. Quite a few of you, it's really revealing, you were very generous in talking to us, and quite a few commissioners come from a place of need in their youth during their early years, and they bring that experience and the desire for more and more complete student aid. They bring that really as the motivating factor for being on ACT. And that lived experience is very helpful to all of us. So thank you for sharing that and for what you bring in your backgrounds, all of us, into that. There was quite a bit of praise from Ben and your expertise, and people see it as particularly beneficial when you give us a background on something as expertise, and I think Mr. Simon mentioned first and someone else followed that when there's a particularly complex agenda. Several meetings ago when you gave us a guide and said, okay, pay more attention to this and this, that was extraordinarily helpful. There was also universal praise for the testimony, the invited guests that you started, Terry, and everybody sees that as beneficial, both from having outside voices and for the expertise, the overall educational value. So to build on that, and now I'm going to start going into how our meetings might change a little bit. To build on that, Ben has already started with today's meeting. You see that we have experts on on the admission and how the court hearings, how all of that has changed and what we can expect. So that's calling it right now, HECC Commissioner Learning Series. Those will be about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes as we do them. We won't do them every meeting. It might be that we end up alternating that with invited testimony. At the beginning, we're going to see how that works. But we will be doing more education to make sure we build our expertise and knowledge around these issues that are most important. How else our meetings might change? You're all here, and we're going to have more. We talked to everyone about in-person meetings, and Greg and I both believe that to the extent we can do them, and it might, again, we're going to work out whether it's every other meeting or how often to do it. But we all of you expressed a desire for greater community among commissioners, and that's just really hard to do it if you're not in the same room together. So we're going to be clearer about which meetings are highest priority to be in person and which are more either remote or hybrid, and schedule those well in advance. They are scheduled, but designate what kind of meeting something is well in advance. Also, several of you mentioned the desire to visit some campuses, which was a wonderful practice of twice a year?
Yeah, typically twice a year.
Before COVID, and obviously we had to stop it there, so we'll be talking to them and deciding, okay, is that going to be once this year and twice next, but we will incorporate that, which is another good way to build community and to build our knowledge. It turns out, I didn't know this until Ben told us, it turns out that except for rulemaking, we can designate what things come before us at commission meetings and what things, like most things, most of the work is already designated for Ben and staff and decisions. So we'll be reviewing that and seeing if we need to, as we want to build the education component of this meeting, if we want to move some more things to staff and to Ben. We are going to be trying for CRISPR summaries of staff work. Everyone asked for fewer acronyms. I'm sorry, staff, but they did. Or if a report highly depends on acronyms, so please give us a guide at the beginning. And so, as I said, we'll be talking about these items and seeing what we need to do. So that's the summary of the meetings again. Thank you. Anything to add on that?
Great summary.
Now I want to go a few minutes into a couple of things, and I want to talk first about the landscape we're in. And I didn't realize till after I made my notes, it's a big and important part of what Ben's going to talk about with strategic planning. So I'm not going to belabor it. But our biggest challenge of many really is helping Oregon higher education meet the needs of the future. There's no doubt. I mean, I realize that's not as concrete as it could be in terms of, okay, how do we do that? But that's the umbrella. We have to help Oregon meet the needs of the future. And the landscape, as we know, and some of you know better than I do even, the ground under higher education has shifted dramatically. Just even in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm not talking about the last decade, I'm talking about sort of pandemic forward. And therefore, those of us who work in higher education, whether it's in volunteer capacity or whether it's as employees, have to figure out how we adapt to this. There are many things, again, Ben has a pretty long list, but there's several I want to point out because I've thought about them a lot, read about them a lot, and I don't think there's a way to do our work to the level of excellence that we want if we aren't always considering the context of the landscape. So there is, first, I'm going to talk a minute about confidence, about cost, about community, and about technology. So those are the four, just a sentence or two on each. The confidence is really tied to the political landscape. I mean, this is the first time in my life that I'm aware of the confidence in higher education dropping so quickly. It is granted at a time when confidence in all institutions is dropping. So I'm not trying to isolate it and say this only applies to higher education. But we've had a drop from in 2015, more than half, 57% of people said they had a great deal of confidence or full confidence in higher education. Last year was 36%, dropped 21 percentage points. That's close to half. I mean, that's huge. And so when we think about what we're trying to do, if we have big pockets of people who not only don't see the benefit of higher education, but see it as a negative, then we have to have that in our minds as we go forward or think about programs, think about everything else. These aren't things, I'm not assuming we can change any of these. It's not our job and we can't do it, and these are not specific to Oregon. So it's not, we've got to fix this, or we can do one thing and wow, people will think higher education is wonderful. We just have to know that's the context we're operating. And we haven't had the active political, essentially campaigning against higher education. And that's new, and I don't know that that can change anytime soon. Again, I just wasn't aware of it. The cost of higher education. There's some variation, of course, between community colleges and universities and public and private. But basically, if you look at it nationwide and put it all in a pot, tuition and fees have increased at double the level of inflation every year. I'm speaking before the inflation, all of the years when inflation was very low. What we have, I don't think that's sustainable. And it is our goal to continue to advocate long and hard for more funding for Oregon so that it can come closer to matching our neighbors to the south and to the north. But we also have to be aware that this is what it is. This is the universe we're operating in. And we have to figure out or try to help figure out, is there a way to help make education cost less? So it is less expensive to students. For instance, questions like what cooperative efforts can we promote around the state? Those sorts of questions. Community. Well, I come from a time when, back in the dark ages, when you thought of college, you thought of residential, students just out of high school, defined community living on campus. Obviously, that's long gone. But what we've seen too is the whole meaning of community and its availability for support has changed and then changed again because of COVID. And we don't know where that's going to land, but we do know its neat effect on students, and we're just starting, education is just starting to figure out some of those impacts. Technology is the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of context. Generative AI was released in November of last year. Within 2 months, it had 100 million worldwide users signed up. 4 months, and now it has, last thing I saw was about 185, if Helen's here, she can correct me, but close to 200 million worldwide. That's not something we expected to be on the horizon. And so when you pair that with what we already know about technology, I mean, education in general, Greg pointed this out to me, hadn't really fully adapted to the virtual, where education isn't bound by time or place. And now we have this on top of it. So that is a huge factor for us. If you only looked at those 4 factors and nothing else, you begin to understand why higher ed leadership is so difficult today and why education absolutely must keep students at the center of all we do. And if we do that, we will help the universities, we will help the colleges, we will help the students, we will help the state. The big question I take away from all of that is, do we know where we are as a state in relation to this massive change? And I'm not sure I do. And I don't know, again, it might not be precise, but I think that's a question for us to remember. Is, do we know where we are as a state as these massive changes continue to affect students so much? What is the gap? how do we begin to close it? So that's a question that we will keep at the center, in part as we do strategic planning. And I think of it, this is journalistic training, I think of it as a story. What's the story we want to tell about higher education in Oregon? And how can we help do that? And so you'll see on some reports, I'm gonna help us sort of focus on, okay, what is that report trying to tell us? What's the story? What's the piece of the story there? So that's all. Those are the things that matter to me. You very well, I'm sure you express them differently, or you have some others, but I wanted to give you that background. I'm already putting this behind. The strategic planning, we will work on this in strategic planning. I wanted to let you know that Commissioner Simnett and Commissioner Fajardo and Commissioner Hayman have agreed to represent us and be on the planning committee the whole time. We will be involved some as a full commission, and they will also be. So thank you to the three of you. I really appreciate that. And did I forget? We'll make it up. We'll make it up. Any questions you need to ask now? If not, we're going to go right ahead because I've said 3 times now. We're back. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll be glad to explore any of this with you later. Okay. Our next item is executive director's report.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. Terrific summary of issues, and some of which you're right will come back up in our strategic planning briefing later today. Really enjoying and appreciating the opportunity. You are the chair and vice chair, and I'm excited to work on some of the changes that you described, including work with our staff to make these meetings more accessible, more engaging, more educational, some of which we'll start to see reflected today. The presentation we'll have this afternoon with outside experts really in the sake of educating the commission on research strategies. So really important that. I'm going to dedicate most of this report time to our communications director, and I'm going to get and if you want to get set up, because one of the most exciting things happening in the last 6 months of the HECC has been the development of and major things happening, has been the creation of a new website. We'll flip the switch on that next week. So what you're going to get from Endy in just a moment is a preview of the website that will go live in about a week. It's, as you'll see, a really terrific upgrade. So while she's getting set up, I'll also just mention, by way of a sort of commission or agency update, we completed in December what has become basically an annual survey of our staff. We have about 185 staff, and 78% of them completed a survey that uses the Gallup tool, the sort of polling and other agency to ask employees of any organization about their level of engagement, employee engagement. And there's a set of questions that Gallup uses all over the world with organizations that is highly correlated. Positive answers on these questions is highly correlated to high-performing organizations and organizations where employees are engaged. So we've been getting this data year over year from our staff, and I'm pleased to report, as I shared with our all staff yesterday, that our results on those employee engagement surveys have improved year over year since we started this back in 2016. We've made a full half-point gain on a 5-point scale overall. It also shows that we have room to grow. While we perform better on this measure, that we're in the sort of 65th percentile, I think, for government agencies, which is our comparative group. So we do better than average. We still clearly have room to support our employees and be even more engaged in their work. But it's a neat tool. We, for the first time this year, through a partnership with Gallup and states, promoting this across all state agencies, so it's sort of all doing this. For the first time this year, we have access to additional Gallup resources that allow us to support us in turning the data into action, working with our staff to figure out how to improve their engagement. And this, engagement is measured by things like people knowing what the expectations are for them in their job, being clear about that, knowing that somebody cares about them and their work, getting regular feedback on their work. So it's that sort of understand it. Anyway, I wanted to share that because it's important and exciting, and from time to time you will hear me give updates on this, medium-sized organization that you ultimately govern, oversee through your oversight directly of me, and that is responsible for so much of the work that comes before you and the state of Oregon. It's a big part of my job and the deputy Rodney's job to ensure that the state is functioning well, that our employees are thriving, and I'm pleased to report that that is largely the case. The only other thing I'll say before turning it over to Enda, you mentioned our new commissioners. I checked, and that Senate floor session was actually this morning. So the Senate Executive Appointments Committee recommended those the appointments of Teresa Martinez and John Proctor Andrews for full Senate confirmation today. That vote is scheduled to take place this morning. And we need to double check when they become effective. We're going to assume that Terry and Helen are good for the day. We're not going to try to transition midday or mid-meeting. We're going to say, yes, you vote all the way through. But assuming Senate passage of the commissioners, with that, remainder of this time, about 15 minutes, and I tour of the new website.
Morning.
Morning.
We're and I'm Cardigan, Communications Director. And I'm so excited to be at this point to share with you a preview of our new website. It will be live next week. We'll announce it on February 14th, Valentine's Day. We'll actually go out the night before. So that you'll see today is very nearly done site. And I'm going to start with just a few slides to give you a little bit of background on this project. Okay, so this is just the who, what, when, where, why of this project. So what we're talking about is the Oregon.gov/higher ed website. That's our main agency website. And be clear, that's where you go for all your commission materials. You probably used to go in there. We as an agency also that's okay. So we do have 3 other program-led websites, and I just want to be clear because they also are very important sites. We're all 3 redesigned recently. So this redesign does not include these program websites. That's the Workforce Development Board site, the Oregon Student Aid site, which is a very important public site where all the students and families go to apply for grants and aid, and the Oregon Serves site that is where people go for the AmeriCorps program and such in our state. So we link predominantly to these sites in the main agency website. This redesign. So why are we doing this? This was actually a required change. The state of Oregon manages the template systems for the state, and they moved to a new set of templates. It's on the SharePoint platform that it templates for the state. All agencies needed to move, and we were on the previous version, which is going to be sunset. The upgrade is a really important and great thing for the state. One of the main reasons for it is to be better in compliance with federal and state accessibility laws, so that people with disabilities can access our content with assistive devices, screen readers, and be able to get all the content. It also is a lot more responsive on mobile devices and just has a lot more capacity in different ways of showing information than the previous version does. We have not redesigned since 2016, and our website has grown, and it's lots of inconsistencies emergency, so it's long overdue, and this was a great opportunity to improve. It was also a very expedited project because of the requirements. So we started with hiring a contractor, and we actually hired Tyler Technologies, which is the same company that works and develops the templates for the state. So they also will contract with agencies when they need it, and they help us with the whole website redesign, the migration, the build, some customization of it so that it looks like us, our branding, and meets our needs. And I will, you can kind of scan here some of the kind of key improvements of the site. I will go over those when I show you the site itself. So I'm not going to read through them today, but lots of great things. Anyway, here I want to thank everyone who's been involved in the design. This, in order to do this for a time period, it really required everyone to put their heads together and the sponsorship of it, and everyone kind of shifting their priorities to make this happen. The executive team, content managers, a small team of implementers, music person, say Laura Item, and myself, and importantly, the three ladies who are working closely with the Tyler Technologies. They have Parashar, MS, and Laura, these many talented people. So happy to work with them. This PowerPoint and show you the site itself. This is the existing site, the before and after. As you can see, we have a pretty busy homepage, lots of content. And so we are through the site, which is so you can see a little bit. Overall, on first view, a lot fewer words, more images, and easier. We're trying to really simplify the homepage. I'm going to give you kind of a tour of the top menu and everything below on the page points to things that are in the menu somewhere. So there are multiple ways to get it. And one of the things I'm really excited about on the site is that most of the images are from our actual students. Thanks to the college and university marketing folks who shared their photos for us. So you'll see photos of students and learners throughout the site. The top menu has 4 categories. I'm going to go through them, give you a view of each of them. So this top area is featured work, and we'll be able to change that over time. It automatically advances, or you can pause on one of these or more. And I hope you do some of those as we're featuring at the start, which are some of our network that you're involved in right now. Announcement of the new website. A recent initiatives page that I'll give you a little peek at. And a data and research page that points to some of our key findings of our research. Down below, these 4 links are intended to be action areas. And so these are our kind of categories of action drawn from analytics of what people are looking for on our site and also what we want people to be finding. So on each of these, they expand to more actions, and then you click on them again, and they drop out. So time and pay will go to a number of these will go to the Oregon Student Aid.gov pages and their resources. Aging policy and funding decisions. Elevated this both here and you'll see it up on the menu on public meetings and action of our site now, because we saw that many of our users were going to our site for public meetings. So many public meetings want to be welcome. So I want to notice how you can get very easily to the materials when you're looking for them. Partner with us for equity, some of our key links on the important equity work we're doing. And then educators and trainers, these are some of the transaction-focused links that institutions and workforce partners will, are looking for on our site. All these and more are in the menu above. I want to share a couple of accessibility features on the site. You can go to the very top of the site, and the languages button is now more prominent for folks, so you can see the site and Spanish, and there it is. English. There are also a couple really good search capabilities that I think will help people find information on the site, like the Google search under the very top. And in our footer, we have this page, Find Information, which has a search function which is tied to keywords on our site, so that should be a really good way to find things as well if you're not finding them in browsing. It's also a kind of revisit, so what people are often looking for here. We have the mortarboard and the hard hat and our custom footer to visually show about what the workforce and writing, since it's not obvious in writing. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the homepage. I'm going to go through the menu and give you some kind of highlights of each of the sections. The Access College and Training section is where students, families can go to find the grants and scholarship links that are managed by Oregon Student Aid, but also explore the links to all the different kinds of post-secondary options that we work with. So each of these sections has a landing page. You can see at the top it says home, and that's kind of a visual way of getting at the same content as in the menu. Many of these links at the top, you click on them, they'll take you to the Oregon Student Aid website and links for grant scholarships. These links here are all the different post-secondary training options that we set up a menu for. Go to one of those. We used to have this just as a text page. We now have pages for our public institutions that have an image of each of them. Click on that and get key links for each campus. Universities are the same. There's an increased focus on also workforce opportunities in this section. That's why we named it Access College and Training, not just. And we also have the links to our approved licensed private schools and private. I'm going to jump to public meetings and engagement. This is kind of the elevated section with all of our public meetings. This is one way that you can get to different ways you can get to your commission pages. One, on the homepage, go to engaging policy and funding decisions. Your link there. Two, in the menu. There. Three, the public meetings and engagement has a landing page like the others, more visual. Here you get links to what is the commission about, your public meeting, our news and updates pages, and then you get a list of all the different advisory boards that we lead in addition to that, that also have public meetings. I'm going to show you your page. I'm really excited about the new meeting materials function that I think will simplify things a lot. So this is the page that you have, that is the landing page for the commission that talks about your key responsibilities and structure. And then we have a page that has public meeting materials and your bio page. All the public meeting materials, we used to have them on current, past, and future meetings on all separate pages. We now have it all on one page. So I think that'll be so much easier for folks to see. You have this meeting today, under upcoming meetings, we have future meetings, which is kind of clear, and you can go expand it, get all your materials, and you can go back into past meetings and easily find materials that way as well. That's correct. And that was a custom web part for our site. Come to the strategy, research, and data section, where we have some really neat developments. So this section now combines the strategic high-level work that we like to make available to your students, and the equity lens, the state educational attainment goals, so some of those really grounding pages for folks. But also we have a new page that is featured from the homepage called Initiatives, and I think this will be a nice page to educate people about just what we're doing, what we're up to. As you know, we have those 4 strategic action areas in our strategic framework: outreach, funding, learner pathways, and reporting. And what we have here is under each of those areas, we've highlighted 9 recent actions, recent activity, or ongoing activity that we're involved in right now. And roll over it, you get a brief overview of what we're doing, and then you click to it and it'll bring you to the page on the website where you can learn more about that indicator activity. And it's a deep page, there's a lot of content there, but I think we're doing a lot. So I think that'll be not just our goals, but what our actions are. Strategy. Also in this section, strategy, research, and data are the legislative and budget development materials. So those pages are housed in this menu. They're at the very bottom. And if you go there, you'll find that we participating this week, for example. And we have all of our research data and reports. And this is the menu of them visually from the landing page. I'm going to show you some of them you'll be well familiar with, like our statewide snapshots. I'm just going to show you one new development, which is a great release by our research and data shop, and it is interactive data dashboards. So we have developed 4 dashboards. 3 of them will be available at launch, 1 coming soon, that allow people to look for some of the key data on enrollment, affordability, completion, and employment outcomes by campus, by institution, and in a kind of interactive platform. So I'm going to show you the community college dashboard as a preview here, and I could probably spend a lot of time on this, and we'll have time to explore it. I want to at least show you a preview. This is built using Power BI. And you go to the enrollment page for community colleges. And here you see all kinds of enrollment breakouts. You will go to the state overview first, that you can look by institution. And you can also filter this data by year, student type, residency, primary area study. So this is a very deep set of resources to explore, and each of these categories has multiple views. Each of those has multiple filters. So it's a huge development, and congrats to the class, Jesse Sinkins, and the whole research. I'm going to lastly jump to offices and programs. This is the deepest kind of area of our site. We have 8 offices across the HECC, and all the offices are represented here and their work. You are not going to go into every one of them, but many of the initiatives and programs that we're featuring on the homepage and in the initiative sections are going to content here, because this work is led by our offices. We do have a couple of new sections that we've developed for programs that are not led by specific offices, but inter-office programs. And that's, we have a landing page now for the transfer work that is being led by the agency, where you can find the transfer council, the currently approved common course numbering courses, currently approved major transfer maps, student resources. We also have a section on future reporting, also the integrated initiative, and the component I like, which is a map where you can actually click on the workforce development board region and see that organizations are receiving grants by right now. Also just want to note in the agency section, we have under about the tech agency, we have a page on our commitment to equity and the work we're doing internally and externally to prioritize that change. And I just will add on one other thing that we have approved, which is our grant and contracting opportunities, which is a lot more friendly now for people and the opportunities that we have now descriptions of each of the opportunities. I'm going to end there. I'm happy to take any questions or comments. And for the public, I want people to know that the current site will be redirected to the relevant pages on the site. So there shouldn't be very much disruption for people. But if you have bookmarked documents instead of pages, then those will need to be updated.
I'll just note that I will share with commissioners later today via email a link that will allow you to access the staging website prior to release next week. So that we're not prepared to share that externally yet. So we do not do so as we work out any final bugs. Of course, if you notice any, please let us know. But I want to give you access to explore. Really, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Cook. Yeah, thank you so much for all of this hard work. I really love the look of it, and I think it really improved our web presence. I had one question about the tab that includes the list of excuse me, the list of community colleges and colleges around the state. Especially for students who are looking for their local school who might not be know what it's named or have the patience to sort through a whole list. Would it be potentially possible to add an interactive map for at the top to be a little bit more visually friendly to people who are coming in with lower levels of familiarity with the community college system?
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question, and we did consider that. I hope the functions in the site allow that in the future. The map functions that are built into the site didn't fit that need exactly. I mean, basically, you can do a county-based map or a region-shaped map, but many of our community colleges and universities don't just serve the region, they serve the whole state, so it wouldn't be misrepresentative. So it wasn't a good fit with the technology right now, but it is something that I would love to do.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I noticed there was an audio tab that was on that audio. Wasn't there?
I think it was with the public meeting materials, perhaps. And I as a recording, a link to the recordings.
We do in our public meeting materials link to recordings of the meetings on our YouTube channel. So yeah, that is put into the meeting archive after the meeting, and so we can just be having reference.
I was just curious what was on audio.
What we're saying right now.
You're on.
All right.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this redesign. I'm so excited about so many of these changes, and in particular, I feel like it's really organized by the audience needs now, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I think that'll be hugely beneficial, especially as we continue our work on engaging the community. I had a question, and maybe this is not relevant, and maybe this is something that I should already know. But does the agency use social media or is on social media?
Yes, we are, and there is under the public meetings and engagement section, there is under the news tab, there is a page that has news to all of our social media channels. We have the agency-wide news is just through X right now, but our programs, HECC, the more outreach focused programs like HECC, Oregon Youth First, have their own channels. HECC especially is very active on social media, and so we have links to all of those channels on our own.
And that was through the community.
Yeah, it's also on the Twitter of every page.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can click on the social media link in the Twitter and get to all of this.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are terrific changes. I can't wait to spend time on that. I'm wondering if there's anything we're doing to publicize it more widely, especially the college and university directory, or the same applies to workplace. But that's information that isn't readily available within the state. You can get it nationally and then click on Oregon to compare enrollments and aid and everything else. But it just seems like more people need to know that that's available. So if there are ways that we can publicize it
Thank you.
in schools or however, because that's a real, all of it is a very real service, but that's a big one.
Thank you. Yeah, I in terms of publicizing it, I will also be sending out an announcement to our list next week about the new site and the features of it. I think, we've rewritten and reworked like all the content of the site, and so it's a really neat opportunity to introduce people to all kinds of areas of our work. So I was thinking that I would be featuring some pages on our social media channel over the next few months as well, to draw attention to some really films, and also just use it as an opportunity to tell people what we are and what we're about. And I hope that that's some thought also.
Yeah, and where are we on SEI? I mean, if I Google Oregon colleges, would this site come up first? I think that's really the question. You don't know what you're looking for, but anyway, so give some thought to that and how we can, if there's a way to make sure that we are coming up in searches.
Oregon.gov platform does pretty well. Was not part of our contract to work on kind of optimization in that way. But I will.
That's what we're all. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone.
That's
very important.
The whole team.
Exciting. Okay. Next on our agenda is community college president.
As President Gibbs. And as they are coming to the front, let me just remind commissioners that your lunch order cutoff is 10:15, so you have 20 minutes to get a lunch order in if you haven't already.
And I'm not
You
sharing.
will not eat.
That's right, I'm not sharing.
I don't mind. Don't eat lunch. That's why I'm not sharing.
Wonderful, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Rowe. I'm used to calling Vice Chair Rowe.
That's fine.
Chair Rowe. And Vice Chair Neiman and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Donna Llewellyn. I'm the director of the Office of Community Colleges and Workforce Development here at the HECC. Over the past few months, we've been introducing you to some of Oregon's newest community college presidents. Today, I'm joined by Portland Community College's 8th and first permanent woman president, Dr. Adrienne Lennox. She has held progressively higher level positions in higher education for more than 15 years. She's been an instructor, an administrator, and a president. So she's gonna give a little presentation about PCC, and please join me in welcoming President Lennox to the commission.
Thank you, Donna. And
I want to express honor for each of you who are here, Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Heyman, and also our partners in this field, Donna and Ben. This is my first time coming to your area. I always see you in our spaces, so I'm glad to be here and be before you this morning. Rachel, good to see you. We were on a trip together. We just came from DC late last night. So, you know, fresh as a bug here. So,
Guthrie has your PowerPoint?
you do. Okay,
Awesome.
Guthrie, you could-
I'm gonna step aside and let you have this.
Okay, thank you so much. So as Donna mentioned, I am the president of Portland Community College, started my tenure there July of 2022. I come by way of higher education experience across 2, now 3 states, originating in Texas, and then Michigan, and now Oregon, all very different in culture and orientation and politics and people, all of things. And so it's been refining for me in terms of learning how to navigate the higher education space across states, but across cultures, and across regions. So the second slide there, just a bit about me. I'm a Texas girl, West Texas girl at heart, a military child, but I love how I came to love higher education. Was at an early age. I graduated in high school and started college at the age of 16. And since then, through professional track and field career, was drawn back to higher education by way of life, right? And so it became an opportunity for me to be a trailblazer, a pioneer, and a partner in this space where there's always so much to achieve and accomplish. So if we can go to the third slide. And I just want to, for those of you who may or may not be, some of this might be a refresher, but I do want to give a quick overview about Portland Community College. So Portland Community College is the state's largest post-secondary institution, serving over 50,000 students. And each year, I'm always excited to share that we are trending upward in enrollment, which is great, and it hasn't happened since, I think, 2008. So it was not just a pandemic thing where we've seen enrollment dipping across the community colleges, but Portland Community College, like many in the state, are now seeing that upward tick and starting to see that shift in enrollment. We have now about a 7% increase in student FTE for our winter 2024 term. We're also one of the most diverse institutions. Our institution serves about 1/3 population students of color, and we are designated as an emerging Hispanic serving institution where when you reach that percentage threshold, you reach this status, but you also open doors for additional funding for not just Hispanic students, but for all students and opportunities to do that. We're excited to be approaching that status. So our service district includes 4 counties. We have 4 comprehensive campuses and 10 centers, including the PCC Olmec Training Center in Scoop Creek, which is one of our newer facilities, and educational programming in correctional facilities. We really try to reach all areas across the region, including those populations that may not have access to education and work opportunities. We're also one of the largest employers in Portland, Oregon, with over 3,500 employees. I had the honor of taking this position. Martin Mitsui had made some significant changes to the college where we are now still moving forward in a 1 college model, where previously there were 4 campuses, a president per campus, and then Martin Mitsui's role. So it's a heavy lift, but it's a great opportunity and a challenge. And nothing that, with a great team around me and great collaborators and partners in the state and across the region, but also this West Texas girl style. I mean, I'm just like, let's take the bull by the horn, let's get it done. So PCC contributes $2.3 billion in annual income to the region. That was the result of our most recent economic impact study. Students do see a significant return on investment. So for example, for every dollar invested in their education, students see an average of $5.10 in future earnings. We can go to the 4th slide. I'd like to give you an overview, just a quick snapshot of our student demographic. And so this slide, and I have to turn around because it's just so colorful, but this slide here, as you can see, a large portion of our student demographics, 52% are white, but you can see the breakdown of the 1/3 population of our students of color. But also it's important to note that, and emphasize that our students aren't our traditional students, those that go to 4-year, typically right out of high school. We see our adult population over 25 years is really a significant portion of our student demographics. Because of some of the demographics here and trends that you see here, we are largely focusing on how we can target and in a more intentional and laser-focused way our efforts to reach adult populations. Because it's really important to not just provide education, but also opportunities for workforce, short-term workforce training, upskilling, so that they can re-enter or remain in the workforce and have an increased opportunity for livable wages and that economic and social mobility that we all strive for as a community college. So we can go to the fifth slide. I'll talk to you briefly about some PCC programs. So PCC, we offer 91 academic programs and 123 degrees and certificates. Our model of academic and career pathways does focus on equitable student success and access, including outreach and support for underrepresented populations. We have, over the last year since assuming this tenure, taken a more intentional effort around strategic enrollment planning, which we are undergoing right now with Ruffalo Mill 11th, and hoping to wrap that up within the next few months. But also, in addition to some of the 91 programs and degrees and certificates, we have career pathway programs, which include advisors who help our students to identify their career choice, and also connect them with the support services, because we know it's more than just about work. They need support, they need the wraparound services. Overall, CTE courses have been driving our enrollment, especially in the highest demand areas across the state, where we're seeing those workforce shortages and those gaps such as manufacturing, healthcare, and technology. We also continue to see increases in apprenticeship and significant increases in our English for speakers of other languages program. Now, 100% of our recent graduating class in our nursing program, one high need area we provide training for, they were either employed as a nurse or enrolled in the BSN, Bachelor of Science in Nursing program within 6 months. And that speaks volumes too to the critical importance of not just having a community college, but having a community college partner with a 4-year or educational institution that gives them the transfer opportunity for a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing as well. A hot topic right now, which I'm in the core of, and you all probably, I'm sure, have heard of, is the semiconductor workforce training as Oregon prepares for major investments to the industry. Largely triggered, of course, by the federal funding at the CHIPS Act level, with the CHIPS Act at the federal level. So PCC does have several programs and courses that introduce students to the industry in the semiconductor realm. We have a 1-year mechatronics certificate and a microelectronics associate's degree that has a job placement rate of 95%. And top employers hiring graduates are leaders like Intel, Qorvo, Lam Research, Applied Materials, and Microchip. We also have an electronic engineering technology transfer degree that prepares students to transfer to a 4-year program. And these are just only a couple of examples of what we offer in the realm of semiconductor. We know that that will be a critical intersection with community colleges as we move the semiconductor forward in the state, across the region, and nationally, and ultimately globally. So, you know, it's like keep moving. So let me give you a quick snapshot of our financial picture. The next slide. So on this snapshot, you know, how is our piece of the pie and funding broken down, right? So our funding shows that there's a little over half, 51% comes from the CCSF, the Community College Support Fund, and other government sources. This is how we as a community college are able to keep our tuition at low and increase access to education for all. So the importance of the CCSF helps us to help students to create that access and maintain our mission of affordability, but also being able to mitigate the financial burdens that we know. Cost of living is significant here in Oregon. And so any way that we can continue to remain affordable and accessible is needed. And so you can see how it helps us here in addition to the CCSF funding. The bulk of the rest of our funding does come from tuition and taxes and or bond measures, which have been successful across the district of the college. If we can go to the next slide, I'd like to highlight a few initiatives funded through the HECC, such as the Future Ready Oregon, which I'm not going to go into detail about that. You are quite familiar with that. But some of the most significant efforts of our work have been through Future Ready Oregon, and I'll just let you peruse through that at your convenience. I did speak earlier about the Career Pathways program that enables us to better reach underserved students and bolster workforce training programs. Other things are IETs, which are integrated education and training options in advanced manufacturing and welding. Our IETs, as we call them, they enable the non-native English speakers, high school equivalency graduates, and students who need extra support in reading, writing, and math to learn their basic studies at the same time as their workforce training. And this allows them to enter the workforce faster, which we know is critical to helping them meet the basic needs for themselves, their families, and within their communities. We also have new career pathway certificates. They were created in aluminum welding and certified nursing assistant, which are two fields in high demand, right? So this funding also supported underserved students through the tuition support, books, as well as laptops. Through the Future Ready Oregon Workforce Readiness Grants, we partnered with community-based organizations and industry to update our manufacturing curriculum to increase cultural relevance and outreach to communities. And then we also have the credit for prior learning support, which enabled us to train the faculty side of the house in assessing credit for prior learning, also creating more course challenges by which students can receive credit and develop more comprehensive campaigns to expand their understanding and their learning in the environment. So we are now excited, I want to share, in wrapping up this slide, to work through the second round of funding with a program we are calling Community to Career that will support healthcare and manufacturing workforce training with industry recognized certifications and pathways to employment. This will be targeted, however, for underserved populations through outreach at our HECC opportunity centers and working specifically with community-based organizations. The next slide is Future Connect. I won't really run through that too much, but I do want to just emphasize that it is a scholarship program that offers the intensive support to students who identify as first generation and low income. And since 2014, 2,000 scholarships have been provided to first-time students. And in just this biennium, we have already provided over 130 students with wraparound services. The next slide talks about our benefits navigator. This was created to address what we know and we hear about so much across the state, student basic needs, insecurity. And so Portland Community College leads the statewide consortium, which includes all of the colleges and universities. This includes running statewide convenings to provide technical assistance and sharing of best practices. Now, each public institution does have a benefit navigator that is dedicated to working directly with the students who help them navigate across federal, state, local, and college resources, which include everything from SNAP, healthcare, food pantries, emergency grants, housing, utility support, and more. So as I wrap up, if we can go to the last slide, as I have led the college as a champion for education and transformative community impact, my vision for Portland Community College is that Portland Community College, as the community's college, one among many, serves in excellence as a conduit of opportunity to advance equity, learning, work-ready skills, and economic and social mobility for all. And in this ever-changing world, we have a critical and a vital role as commissioners, and I encourage you to continue in your day in and day out to remain focused on our collective responsibilities, because we are in this together, our collective responsibilities to innovate and adapt in ways that ensure equity, inclusivity, and sustainability for all. I also ask that each of you, in your decisions that you have to make, that you carefully consider your roles and the decisions that lie ahead by answering this question, not today, but in critical thought, right? How do you know that it is time to change or shift from the old way or the same way of doing things? And this is what my charge to each of you to think collectively about is when the outcomes fail to achieve transformative impact for every Oregonian, when the systems and structures no longer serve in the best interests of our communities and those we serve, and when the gap of disparities between groups, communities, underrepresented persons, and marginalized populations are not fully resolved, this is the time for change. Now, it was an honor again to be here before you today. I thank you for making, for me, a wonderful morning to just be able to share our purpose and our collective mission. And we cannot do it alone. I came in Oregon and I lead PCC with this mission that we can only do it as one together one. So thank you, and if there are any questions, I know for sake of time, I want to honor your time and agenda. Please email me, but is there any pressing question or questions, you want me to address at this time? Go ahead.
Although I was really intrigued, I understand your Killingsworth campus, the co-housing that's going on and collaboration with the Oregon Housing Authority. And so I think that's a really interesting partnership with housing and early childhood ed. So yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, so that's one of our newer opportunity centers, and we are really trying to address beyond education. We can't just do education. How can we partner in a shared services model with childcare? We're partnering with THS, we're partnering with NAIA, and we're also looking to include healthcare services in these spaces as a model of how community colleges are integrated in the community as a community college. It is a challenge because there's nuances and complexities and regulations and policies and all the things that you can imagine. However, I think that this has proven that it can be done. And we've actually had interest in how have we done it so that other community colleges can know what hurdles and obstacles, but also what experiences can lend itself to them modeling certain things in that realm as well. Great observation, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in the community. I had actually another question that's unrelated about the Killingsworth campus. I know that there's been a lot of discussion lately about the difficulties that students from Jefferson High School are facing with their remodel of the school. I know that the Cascades campus was brought up as a potential solution to that, but there were a lot of roadblocks in the way. And this is going to be a continuing issue with Portland Public Schools, as Wells High School is going to go through a similar redevelopment in the next bond cycle. What are any updates or any work that PCC is doing to potentially work with the city and county to either expedite or facilitate the usage of campuses that are close by to PBS high schools for alternative uses for the high school students during redevelopment of their campuses?
All right, great question. Well, it certainly is something that has been on the radar and in the media, right? And TCC has been a great partner, especially with Jefferson. One of the things with that most recent request has been, what can our space accommodate where it does not inhibit already scheduled classes and events for our students that we serve at the college, but also what does that mean in terms of regulations, especially with having minors on campus, and do we have, how do we mitigate the liability for having minors on campus, and do we have the right proper policies in place? There's a lot of conversations about how we can do that without having hindrances in various to our existing services and programs. So while it may not have come to fruition fully, we always take every request for partnership in space and services. We have a direct point of contact with PPS, and it may not always resolve in, yes, we can do it, and we can do it exactly how it needs to be done, but we take it very thoughtfully, and we analyze our college operations, our space needs, our policies, our regulations, but also bringing accessibility considerations to that as well. So that's always ongoing and evolving, to say the least.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Giddings. It's a pleasure having you here and to learn more about PCC, and the slides will be in our packet.
Yes.
Slides are in the packet. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for coming. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Look forward to seeing you on your campus.
Come on by.
We're going to move on to public testimony now. And I think the first, Dana Richardson.
Should be online.
Okay, Dana Richardson.
Good morning. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can, Dana. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. The wonders of technology. Good morning. For the record, my name is Dana Richardson. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Council of Presidents, which are made up of the public university presidents. And I have 3 items for you today. One, we're really looking forward to visits from the chair and vice chair and or the vice chair. We'll love having you on campus, hopefully get you to a board meeting at some of those institutions as well. So thank you for that extension of coming out to our campuses. In your meeting materials, I've submitted just a 1-pager on our legislative session priorities. They focus in 2 areas. One is on student supports, the other in the workforce areas. For the students, and I believe the previous speaker touched on a couple of these proposals as well, an emergency needs package, building off of some of the benefits navigator work. We're very supportive of that proposal that was put together by the Oregon Student Association, as well as a relatively small investment of $1 million in the open education resources. So we're fully supporting those requests as well as seeking to get continuing funding for our Strong Start programs that help students transition into post-secondary through some summer bridge programming. In the workforce area, we're collaborating with community colleges and other stakeholders for more semiconductor workforce development. Oregon's really been on the leading edge of getting investments, and now we just need to get people ready to fill a lot of the jobs that are coming out of that work. And then behavioral health, we also have a package to increase the behavioral health workforce. This has been identified as a key need statewide. And lastly, I just want to draw your attention to an agenda item that will be before you all later today. And it's, I believe it's entitled the Opportunity Grant. As you all know, the FAFSA simplification has been rocky in its rollout. And we, I think it's fair to say, are somewhat anxious about the transition to a new aid eligibility determination that's being federally driven in the transition to what's being called the Student Aid Index. And so that federally driven change will have an impact on the number of students who will be eligible for Pell and the opportunity grants. Most students will shift toward a lower income category than they would have under the prior calculations. So while we will see more students, more low income students being eligible for more aid, we also have concern about students who will be bumped up in the eligibility and potentially experience what they feel like is a loss of eligibility and receipt of the aid that they've at least become accustomed to. So the HECC has shared some initial modeling with us, but they don't have everything they need to pencil all of this out either until we get more information from the feds. I just want to flag it for you as an area where, like I say, I think it's fair to say we're a bit anxious to see how it all plays out for students over the next couple of months. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Jen. That's helpful. I assume that all of you are keeping up in the news on the delays, the extended delays on FAFSA, and all universities and people who deal with student aid are rightfully anxious. It does sound like that for many students there'll be an increase in aid, and of course the Oregon Opportunity Grant increased so much this year. But the last date I saw was mid-March. If they can get it right this time, is that what you're saying? So at any rate, there's unfortunately nothing we can do but keep up with that news and know that it is causing great anxiety because they can't get their enrollment numbers until they can tell students the amount of aid.
We'll be discussing more about the grant impacts later.
Awesome, and that's a piece of it. Okay. Thank you very much, Dave. Now with public testimony, we have some students, I believe.
First up, Alex Agdei online.
Alex, are you there?
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes. What would you pronounce your last name for us?
Agdai.
Agdai. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Alex Agdai. I am the chair of the executive committee over at the Oregon Student Association, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some of the work OSA has been working on, some things students are mobilizing around, and pay particular attention to the Student Emergency Needs Package, which has already been touched on a little bit, but a student perspective is always important to add to these spaces. I want to start by talking a little about the Oregon Student Association. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's an association of student body governments that agree to basically coalesce their advocacy efforts. And over the past year, we've been really focusing on rebuilding that organization, and just last week met as a General Assembly to vote on our legislative priorities. This process included over 6 campuses, including a variety of flagships, TRUs, and community colleges from across the state. And from that process, we were able to select our priorities for the short session, as well as begin to start and think and dream about what we want to push for in the long session. The really key thing to understand here is that students at all campuses are experiencing a crisis. When I talk to students at Southern Oregon or Western Oregon, or U of O or LCC or PCC, they all say the same thing, that the top 3 issues are housing, hunger, and transportation and textbooks. These issues face all of our campuses, and because of that, students are beginning to work together to fight and find solutions. The first and most pressing of which is obviously the Student Emergency Needs Package, which OSA has reintroduced in the short session. I want to provide some context here from a student government perspective, because I think it's really important to understand the burden that many students are facing by the lack of funding that has been provided by the state and institutions into these programs. In 2021, when we established our basic needs navigators, there was no programmatic budget assigned to these navigators. At U of O, we were very fortunate in that our student government was willing to dedicate a significant amount of its funds, around $1 million a year, in order to fund this program and provide programmatic funds so that these navigators can actually support students. Last year, through that program, we served almost 4,000 different students. That's over 20% of our students that are in person on campus in Eugene. It's absolutely outrageous that student dollars are subsidizing other students' education. We provided subsidies for textbooks that are distributed over 2,000 times last year. We help provide staffing for a local food pantry as there's not an on-campus option. And whenever these subsidies open, we find that they fill up within 12 hours. There's an overwhelming amount of need on our campuses. And this is just U of O. We're one of the most well-resourced student governments and have been very fortunate in our ability to prop up our basic needs navigator. Other campuses have no programmatic budgets or are unable to support their students at all, other than direct them to other off-campus resources. For that reason, students are really strongly in support of the Student Emergency Needs Package, and they're in the Capitol today as part of the University Day to lobby for it, and will be on the 13th and 14th of next week as part of the Community College Lobby Day and the Oregon Student Association Lobby Day. We have dozens of students coming from tons of different campuses across the state who are here to tell you and the legislature about how important and critical these issues are. The other initiatives that I wanted to highlight were some of our top priorities.
Alex, excuse me. As you move into this, you're over time now, so if you can
Great.
go through this next initiative quickly, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, I'll close out very quickly. The other initiatives we're focusing on are the Student Emergency Needs Package, the Oregon Promise Expansion, the Public University Government's 10-year study, and the TRUES Behavioral Health Package. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Next up, Carissa O'Donnell is online.
Awesome. Hi, can y'all see and hear me okay?
Yes, you can, we can.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, this might sound a bit redundant, but good morning. My name is Carissa O'Donnell, and for the last year, I have had the honor of serving as Oregon State University's Student Body President. Today, over 150 students and advocates from universities across Oregon will assemble at the Capitol to show support for University Lobby Day. Next week, students will return for the Oregon Student Association's Lobby Day on February 14th. Among key issues of concern, students have overwhelmingly voiced how important House Bill 4162, an emergency needs package, is in maintaining higher education affordability. It is becoming more expensive to be a student in Oregon, with rising costs in transportation, textbooks, healthcare, housing, and tuition. The Student Emergency Needs Package is a bipartisan bill that centers student voices and needs. I want to thank you for your time and consideration on this, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and then my email is asosu.prez@oregonstate.edu. But thank you.
Thank you very much for your leadership, student activism. Good, appreciate it. Okay, I think next.
Travis and Crystal Overbeek.
Okay.
Morning. Wanted to come in and speak on a new challenge for some students on campus with regards to being student parents. For the record, my name is Travis Overbeek. I'm with my wife, Crystal Overbeek, and I have a relatively short speech this morning to read. So I come before you today not just in my capacity as the Vice President of the LECC Student Leadership Council, as a testament to the resilience, determination, and potential of student parents across our state. My journey to this moment has been anything but conventional. As a first-generation college student who embarked on the path of higher education over a decade after graduating high school, my story weaves the challenges of juggling parenting, navigating the ever-rising cost of living, and the relentless pursuit of academic and professional excellence. My life is a balancing act shared with my wife, who walks this path with me as both a partner and fellow student. Together, we've made sacrifices that many families can relate to, including uprooting our family or our life from one area of Oregon to another, search for better educational opportunities for ourselves and our 4 young children. This journey, marked by late nights, early mornings, and endless determination, is driven by a vision not just for our future, but for the future of all student parents striving to build a better life through education. My engagement at college goes beyond academics. It is a mission to advocate for the needs of all students, particularly those who, like me, are navigating the treacherous waters of parenthood alongside their studies. Today, I stand before you to amplify the voices of student parents, a group whose unique challenges and needs often go unnoticed in the broader conversation about higher education. The reality we face is one of constant negotiation between the roles of parent and student amidst the backdrop of an escalating cost of living that threatens to push the dream of higher education out of reach. Yet despite these challenges, we persevere, fueled by the belief in a better future for our families. I implore you to consider the pivotal role you play in shaping policies that can either erect barriers or build bridges for student parents, initiatives that provide affordable childcare, financial aid that reflects the true cost of juggling parenthood and education, flexible class schedules, and on-campus resources tailored to the needs of families can significantly ease the burden on student parents. Our stories are not just narratives of struggle, but are testaments to what can be achieved with the right support. By investing in policies that uplift student parents, you are investing in the future of our state, a future built on the principles of equity, opportunity, and the unwavering belief in the transformative power of education. In closing, my journey from a high school graduate to a first-generation college student, a parent, and an advocate underscores the potential within each of us to overcome the odds when given the chance. Let us work together to ensure that higher education is a realm of opportunity for all, irrespective of the complexities of our personal lives. Thank you for your time, your empathy, and your commitment to the future of Oregon and its families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, for coming and for bringing that to our attention. If you talk about endless determination, you clearly are examples of it, and we really appreciate your testimony, your presence here, given everything else you were juggling, and we will make sure it's part of our record, and we will keep you in mind as we do our work. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one additional sign up, Chair John Wyckoff.
Good morning, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Hammond, and members of the commission. I'm John Wyckoff, Deputy Director of the Oregon Community College Association. And I wanted to bring a couple of issues to your attention today. The first, just by way of update today, this afternoon, we will be hearing Senator Deborah Rose's omnibus bill in Senate Education, which has many issues, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but one that we're particularly excited about and look forward to working with you on is a work group around co-requisite education and how to better support and move towards fully implementing co-requisite education in our colleges. So that is in the legislation. Again, we look forward to continuing to partner with you on that and hope to see that pass. The second thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, and then it's in your packet, we'll be talking about it today though, is this federal move from the expected family contribution model to the student aid index model. And I think, we have all, I think, as advocates and as the sector's trying to kind of wrap our heads around what all is going to happen and what this will look like. And I think the bottom line is, right, in 2022, the federal government signaled and sent out tables to the various states saying, essentially, the financial aid was about to get more expensive because they would start to recognize costs, particularly for low-income students that had not been recognized before. And in talking to some of you may remember a former Lane Community College board member and an employee of the University of Oregon who is now the undersecretary for the Department of Education at the federal level, Melanie Munzer, who has been engaged to this issue. And it sounds to me that it's from talking to her, like some states, California, for example, got ahead of this by putting money aside, knowing that financial aid would be more expensive. And some states got a bit more flat-footed, where the now changes in the SAI tables making our overall program more expensive in ways that the current levels of funding and awarding probably do not support. And that's what I was really hoping to focus your attention on, because I think so much of the conversation has been around the FAFSA change, because that's been the most immediate issue, that there's been this brewing problem, maybe too strong word, but brewing fiscal issue that has been there in the background. And 3 weeks ago, we were, as the sector's shown, tables around this that were really quite concerning, where essentially you're moving from 56% of students getting the full award under the current model to 74% of students getting full awards. And if you just kind of think about that, that's going to create a much larger, that's just going to be more money going to students. That's a good thing. On average, more students are going to get more money, but it means the program is currently overextended. And that's where I think some of our neighbors in North planned a bit more for that. We are going to have to make adjustments, and that really puts the commission in, we're going to have to choose between whether you adjust things like the cutoff dates, which means students don't get awards at all, or looking at what the newly set maximum awards are, or potentially putting more money into growing an opportunity grant, which I think after the very healthy increase that we received in the last session is probably a difficult lift, but do want to flag that, because I think from our perspective, it's really important that we try to maintain the broadest access possible, and would urge, and it says so in the letter, I think the more transparency on this, the better. Because I will say that, and I just want to be candid about this, we were, I think in this process in the last 3 weeks, given very complex information in spreadsheet presentations that were confidential, that we couldn't take with us to analyze. And I understand the need to be confidential and not wanting information that may be alarming to get out there, but it's been difficult to give considered feedback in this process because the information has been held pretty closely. And we were looking at numbers where several thousand, 10,000 students were potentially going to get bumped off of aid. And so the more transparency that we can have, the better, so that we can start to plan, our students can start to plan, the institutions can start to plan. The other thing we don't know yet, and I understand this, Pell Grant may for some of these students step in and replace where they would be losing opportunity grant. We just don't know yet, and I have lots of sympathy for the agency on that. But the faster and the more transparent information out.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense, and you articulate the problem very well. We appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda for the community college program approval, and this is an action item, and if anyone has questions, then we pull it out. Is that the correct procedure? Agree. Dan, is that on the table?
Apologies, Chair. What did you ask?
So if anyone has questions, we pull the item out.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So on the consent agenda, the community college program approval, do we have motion? Thank you. So thank you. Second? Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes. Thank you. And we're going to go to the university program approval. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Thank you. A second.
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if this is Ben, might be a question for Ben. This program falls into a category between master's and doctorate specialist. Is that a category of degrees that is already well established, or are we establishing a category that is?
Yes.
I don't know the answer. So I just questioning whether this is a new category of degrees we should anticipate more.
We could defer it to later in the agenda.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
let's try to answer that.
Yeah.
Thank you for raising your hand. We will move this to later in the agenda. Mr. Thomas, we are ready for a legislative report. Did you just run over from the Capitol?
No, I'm upstairs.
How are they doing any business without you?
That is a great question. I haven't had my cop in the room for so long, that means he's
not over there gallivanting around. Good morning, Chair Rowe, Commissioner Tilehouse, Director of Legislative and Policy Affairs. I'll just provide you sort of a couple updates today just on the short session, and then on just very briefly, just a couple of remarks about preparations for the 2025 legislative session and the new budget cycle that we have already begun some initial plans for. So the even year short session is underway. It started on Monday, February 5th. March 10th is the end of that session by constitutional mandate, although it could end and typically does end a couple days before that. Because the nature of the short session, a lot of the work that we do to engage is really already done, even though we're just 4 days in. The majority of the bills that we're looking at already have amendments that represent the final or the near final version of those bills. And our engagement on short sessions has been ongoing since later last year. This year, on the policy front, there appears to be a focus on fentanyl and drug and addiction issues more broadly, as well as housing. And the revenue forecast that was just issued yesterday indicates that there are ample resources available to invest in those areas. But in higher education and workforce development, the agenda is a little bit less robust. For folks that were here in 2022, lawmakers were here in to debate Future Ready Oregon. Investment is increasing the Oregon Promise minimum rewards, the tribal student grant, which is quite a remarkable short session policy agenda. This time around, it's not as dramatic, but there are nonetheless a few important smaller investments and changes that are on the table. This work occurs under a little bit of a political gray cloud. The state Supreme Court just last week issued a decision that qualifies 10 Senate Republican members for running for office for their next term due to a violation against the recently adopted constitutional provision that imposes a limit on unexcused absences and is designed to end walkouts. For those senators, further walkouts are now basically risk-free. And the Senate Republican leader basically has publicly acknowledged as much. But right now, there are no signals that the short session is in jeopardy over disagreements regarding policy. And in fact, the public signals have been so far pretty positive on bipartisanship. I'll talk briefly or now about some track legislation. I think, as most of you know, we don't take any positions on most legislation as typical state agencies for most bills that are considered, but we're still monitoring a lot of items. We've participated in discussion and amendment of multiple bills prior to their introduction. There are several in the written update, and I'll go over 6 of them today. Starting with Senate Bill 1551. This is a financial aid bill that opens a special eligibility window for students that completed a high school diploma or their equivalency during the peak COVID years of the 2020-2021 academic year or the 21-22 academic year. This restores basically their Oregon Promise eligibility, provided that, according to an amendment that's coming out, provided that they attempted no more than one academic term at any point since they've received their high school diploma or their equivalency. That has an approximate cost in the first year of about $6.4 million. If you add the first and second year together, that's an approximate cost of about $24 million. That public hearing is this afternoon, after which the bill is expected to go out to the Education Subcommittee. And we are certainly uncertain whether or not there is appetite amongst the broader legislature to fund that proposal. Senate Bill 1552, this is the Senate Education Committee's omnibus bill that they traditionally run every short session. This has multiple items that we're tracking. If you're following my written update, number 1 and number 2 work together. There are provisions that require the Department of Education to collect course completion and grade data for students, and it requires HECC to establish a direct admissions program for colleges and universities. This work is already ongoing in a voluntary work group, the second iteration of which is kicking off or about to kick off, where HECC is working around the table with community colleges, Department of Education, K-12 folks, public universities, and others to try and determine a way to inform students in high school that they are, in fact, if they wish to be, already admitted to a handful or all of Oregon's community colleges and public universities, and all they need to do is send in an acknowledgement that they are intending to enroll. This data collection is an important piece because it increases the number of students, particularly the students who would perhaps traditionally be non-hand raisers, who would be eligible to receive those types of communications. Next item in the omnibus bill requires HECC to conduct rulemaking to establish Oregon Opportunity Grant awarding principles. This comes in the wake of the Commission's decision to shift from a cost of tuition award model to a cost of attendance award model that some of the partners of the agency felt caught them a little bit off guard last year. And so this provision is designed to just increase transparency and develop a process around establishing the processes and principles by which the Commission determines the award tables, but not the determination of the award tables themselves. So under this rulemaking, we will, which we have committed to conducting in a transparent way to conclude really prior to the conclusion of this calendar year, we would not have to change the rule every time the award tables change. But if the philosophy around the denominator around or the fundamental idea behind the calculation we use to come up with those award tables changes, we would then have to engage in the rulemaking process. Item number 4 in the omnibus fixes a technical issue with the Open Educational Resources Program. It's just a contracting fix. I'm just mentioning it here because those have read the bill will see mention of this program. I know this program is well liked by commissioners, and there are no policy changes whatsoever associated with the mention of the program. It just ensures our ability to continue to contract with open education at Lynn-Benton Community College. Next, as John Wyckoff mentioned, there's the establishment of a work group on co-requisite remedial education that will make recommendations to the HECC Executive Director on whether and how to transition all remedial education in the state to co-requisite delivery model. Donald Llewellyn, me, John Wyckoff, Elizabeth Cox-Grant, Oregon Student Success Center, and Patty Scott, one of the community college presidents, all participated in a seminar held in Colorado in the late summer of last year on this topic, and together jointly devised a strategy to get this work group going. The idea is that the recommendations could inform either both Commission rulemaking policy action, but also potential legislative action in the 2025 legislative session. Number 6 in the omnibus establishes a pilot program to encourage the development of applied baccalaureate degrees at community colleges, although the amendment that has just come out changes that somewhat and would require the Commission to modify its rule to pay under the Community College Support Fund the FTE that's associated with applied baccalaureate and BSN degrees with some associated reporting by HECC that would assist budget writers in the 2025 session in figuring out whether there needs to be a plus up to the CCSF to account for this new programmatic activity at colleges. There's some minor clarifications to the part-time faculty healthcare benefits program. There is a workforce study that would require HECC to contract for a study to help understand and address challenges in Oregon's forestry workforce. And lastly, there is a change that would exempt the transfer council subcommittees that deal in principally academic matters from public meeting processes. There's in 2024 anticipated to be about 70 of these subcommittees, all of which I think each meeting is approximately 2 hours of staff labor just on the public meeting requirement activity alone. So this would be a tremendous savings, not just for the HECC staff, but I think we believe would tremendously help the largely entirely faculty who are not familiar in these processes and technicalities just do the work a little bit better and a little bit easily, and would allow for activities to occur between meetings that under public meeting law cannot occur. We think transparency is maintained here because those decisions that are made in subcommittee have to go to the transfer council, which is a public meeting process, and eventually if they make recommendations for MTMs, major transfer maps, or on common course numbering, eventually have to come here, another public. 4 more bills, all of which will go much more quickly. House Bill 4125, which was heard on Tuesday and has a continuation of that hearing today in the House Higher Education Committee, requires a study on higher education governance. This bill is promoted by the American Federation of Teachers and asks for a contracted independent analysis on whether the governance shifts that have been undertaken in Oregon in the last decade or so have had appropriate impacts on student success and whether other models should be considered. We did work with the sponsor on a slate of amendments that we think focus the bill a little bit better on judging the governor's shift in a broader state and national context, and making sure that any potential alternatives or evaluated against a set of state goals, and would give the researchers ultimately contracted to study quite a bit more latitude on how they determine which methodology would be the most appropriate. House Bill 4162 establishes a pool of funds to the commission to grant to campuses for the purpose of building up systems to support student basic needs. This is the #1 priority of the Oregon Student Association. Their ask is a $5 million ask. Also associated with this bill is an additional $1 million ask for open education resources, but due to constitutional constraints, how bills are drafted, that provision is being stripped out of the bill. The students still intend to testify today on both items jointly, but we'll work on the open educational resources piece once the bill moves to the Ways and Means Education Subcommittee. Two more, House Bill 4163. This bill establishes a grant-making program in HECC to support college access and mentorship opportunities. This is the second crack at a bill that was introduced last year. That is a follow-on on a budget provision from the prior budget that granted $1 million each to 5 college access and mentorship organizations. While of course we'd love to see that investment continue, we asserted as a matter of policy that it should be more of an open grant-making opportunity, so that the entities had to compete for these funds, and so that some funds could be potentially utilized, not just at college mentorship organizations with that kind of track record, but also at community-based organizations that largely have relationships and entire service models around dealing with specific underrepresented populations. And then lastly, House Bill 4164, that amends the 2023 Campus Sexual Misconduct Bill. It makes several changes. A lot of these changes are technical or allow the administration of the bill to move better. The one that we're most interested in is the delay in the requirement that a sexual misconduct climate survey be published. That deadline has passed, and that deadline has passed while HECC's 2 staff members that we were granted for the survey have just been onboarded in the last couple of weeks. So the bill will delay the survey and the deadline for the delivery of that survey until the 2026 academic year. And then lastly, I'll just say a couple words on 2025 legislative concept and policy option package development. So we're in the very early stages of 25 legislative session planning. So as required by the governor's office, we submitted a lengthy list of potential legislative concepts and plots, one that's really far larger than any reasonable final list will be. And this represents really the broadest possible thinking about what the commission may consider in the upcoming budget legislative cycle. We are, and this list is really unprioritized, it's unsocialized, and some of the items may not even represent the final direction of an LC or POP. It's probably, the submission we made is probably best viewed as a list and identification of the problems that the commission may seek to address in the coming budget cycle. Just this morning, the governor's office responded to the legislative concepts side of this list. Once we digest that response, we'll figure out how to prioritize, how to engage on, how to refine those concepts, and we'll progressively provide you with increasing opportunity to view and provide input on those concepts along the way. And this will result in you taking a final vote on these concepts for submission towards the end of the 2024 calendar year. We're still, however, waiting for feedback on that initial POP list.
Just one item to add to your legislative report, which is that we have one, as you know, you had a special meeting last month forwarded one request to the legislature for funding, which was the release of the $18.7 million that had been set aside 2023 legislature for investment in the technical and regional universities this year. So that will be heard on Monday morning in the Education Subcommittee Ways and Means. And we'll learn exactly how the legislature tends to respond to that request that you that we're making as a result of your action last month.
Thank you, Cal, for that speech summary. Other questions about the legislative update or any of the bills now before others? Thank you, sir, very much.
Feel free to go back there.
Or okay, I think we are at that's break time. Go on and take a break. Let's start. You've got like 3 minutes of get back here so we can start a little bit before the hour, please.
10:57.
10:57, sorry. Thank you very much.
We are on mute.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Ready to resume?
Okay, we're ready to resume. We have to wait for Ben to get to the table because our next item is summary of strategic planning. He's caught between legislative update and strategic planning.
We did hear back on the university program from our staff.
Let me wait. Yeah, look at that before we do that.
Okay, so, strategic planning?
Yeah, we're back on.
Yes, we're back on.
Back on. Okay. Thanks. So in your packets is an update on our strategic planning process. I'll spend a few minutes going over that today, inviting a little bit of discussion, although we haven't set aside a lot of time. This represents a bit of a transition in the process of strategic planning. So let me explain that. First, the document itself starts with process as well. Whereas most of the progress on the new strategic plan, sometimes we call it Strategic Plan 4.0, so far to date, most of the discussion work has been at this commission meeting and among the full commission. We are beginning a transition to a different cadence where the plan development will, much of the work on the plan development will occur through a core planning team that Chair Rowe identified the 3 commission participants in. It will also include me and several other HECC staff, facilitated by our contractor we hired last month, and the various sort of groups and outreach that the contractor conducts, data information that it gathers, brings to the core planning team for the purpose of creating documents, developing strategies, ultimately all for the commission's consideration. And it will continue to be the case that at probably every commission meeting between now and the plan's final adoption, we will be briefing you on the work that's taken place, the outreach that's occurred, what we're hearing and learning, providing documentation to the commission, the full commission, for discussion, refinement, feedback. So you will continue to be, the full commission will continue to be engaged in development at every one of these meetings, but much of the actual work, the generative work, will occur in these separate meetings that would be primarily staff, the contractor, and then several of the commissioners as representatives. So we're beginning that transition now. Again, the contractor on board, Coraggio, we worked with them for longer serving commissioners. They were also our contractor for the last phase when we developed the strategic roadmap and the process that they envisioned for gathering feedback and engagement from Oregonians, including our partners, the public, gathering that information and presenting it to the commission via an insights report is very similar. So some of this will feel familiar to longer serving commissioners. And again, ultimately in the service of completing a strategic plan this fall through commission adoption. What I wanted to do today was update you on what I think is, what I hope is an emerging consensus around the commission's vision statement and mission. So I took what I heard from you during our longer discussion in December, modified the vision and mission statement that you were working with then, tried to really incorporate all of the feedback. I'm sure it's not all reflected in there, but tried to sort of generate what I believe is the sort of consensus position of the commission around the vision and mission statements, and then turn some attention to kind of what we're doing with goals. So you'll also see reflected in that section sort of what I interpreted about the commission's feedback on goals. And then finally, we'll look hopefully to a greater degree than we have previously at the key contextual factors that Chair Rowe alluded to early in the meeting. I think my expectation for vision and mission is that it will not be at this point subject to much more commission discussion or deliberation. I'm not asking or suggesting that the commission should finalize it today. We do want to give our partners, the public, an opportunity to see your work and provide feedback on it before we bring it as part of a a draft and a final strategic plan for your consideration. So we're not locked into the wording that you see here. If you want to follow up with me about anything specifically that you that is driving you crazy in the statements in the packet, please feel free to do so. Again, we're not finalizing anything today, but the statements do reflect, I think, the best chance we have today at establishing some consensus among commissioners. But please, again, do feel free to send to me any additional feedback that you may have on those documents. So those revisions are included within sections 2 and 3 of your docket item. The vision statement, just to be clear, because it's a formatting here, maybe a little bit awkward. The vision statement is a pretty long vision statement. It's the same format that you saw during December, but it's this whole statement that begins with the italicized, which might be a way of shorthanding it if you needed only one sentence, and then longer paragraph with these subpoints about anticipating future workforce needs, helping Oregonians reach their highest potentials, fueling a prosperous, resilient, sustainable economy. That is all the vision statement based on, again, your the feedback you provided in December. The mission statement is this effort to really describe, rather than our ambitious vision for Oregon, sort of how we do our work. What is our actual mission? What's the HECC goal? And this is where, again, incorporating the strategic framework from 2017. To make that more actionable and to disassociate this directly with the state rules for educational attainment, statutory goals. You'll see the revision here. Conducting rigorous reporting and analysis, carefully targeting public funding, streamlining learner pathways, expanding outreach to learners, and advocating for change. The HECC needs the strategic transformation of Oregon secondary and training to meet our goals for students, learners. So that's attempts to incorporate again that from December. Let me pause there, see if you have any questions about process or comments on anything else that I've said so far.
Yes.
As I'm reading this, I'm seeing revised vision statement from December 14th reading working for a stronger Oregon where all citizens enjoy economic stability and community connection. I believe in that meeting I did mention to change citizen to a more inclusive.
You did, and that is a
word.
Yes, you did, Rachel. That's a good catch, and I surprised myself to see somehow in the document tracking here that update is not reflected. So
It's
that's
okay.
that's
I
a
think
good.
we decided from my notes, we decided on the based on Commissioner Spelly's suggestion, because even resident is still not entirely inclusive.
Right. So I'll go back, and I think I very much remember making that change. So I think there was a version control issue here that may me into it that I do need to address. So you're right. You'll see that.
Other questions?
Doesn't, thank you, Commissioner Rowe. It's not really a question. I just something that I've noted and appreciated. We have the vision statement is longer and more complex than what was previously in place. But as Chair Rowe noted, we are in a more complex landscape, and I appreciate that. I think it's appropriate to have a longer vision statement here that does mention, call out things like civic participation and dismantling systemic barriers and being a little more specific.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
One of the things one just would suggest, and I think it's here, to make space for the work that Chair Rowe mentioned in your opening remarks, particularly around the public possession of higher education. And I think that nationally, as well here in Oregon, there's the need for a social marketing campaign, for a communications strategy that positions higher education as a value to the state. And each university has a role in that, but it seems like there's a coordinating role for that kind of approach. And I don't, I think you could construe what's here as making space for that, but I don't know if we want to be even more intentional.
Yeah, I think what you're describing could show up as a strategy, right? That's the kind of idea that may appear when we actually look at specific strategies. And then I think it's appropriate to ask the question: does our vision, and probably in particular our mission, the encompassing of that type of strategy? Yeah, I mean, certainly the outreach category, as phrased now, expanding outreach to learners has been construed that as really can include just marketing and information, right? You're talking more at the level of public opinion or perceptions of higher education, and we have to tuck that in. I think it's clearly the mission statement intended to be broad in order to allow for a lot of different types of activities to drive within our mission, but also to give folks a real sense of what it is the HECC does, and would welcome additional inspirations. It's certainly not, mission statement as it's drafted today does not delineate or set sort of full boundaries for the agency's activity. Like one of the things I have to do and share with staff is that not every program that we administer or activity that we do as an agency is reflected directly within this mission statement. This mission statement is really, and this strategic plan, is really focused on how the commission uses its authorities and responsibilities to drive change within Oregon. Now, we have a set of agency activities that are established by the legislature that are, certainly a lot of them are encompassed by this mission statement. And some of them are just other things that the legislature has assigned us to do, right? And we work as an agency and with our staff to have a sense of a parallel plan and a parallel way of thinking. See that this entire strategic plan is really designed to emphasize, in particular, your responsibility, the commission's responsibility to lead through policy making, to lead through advocacy and convening, and the other kinds of tools are particularly best.
Thank you. And really like this work, and I'm excited about the next steps. Two questions or in the written statement, the first sentence. I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier. I feel more uncomfortable with using the word economic stability. Doesn't sound very strong, and maybe it needs to be stable and really important. I'm just wondering if there's another word that might better represent, I think, what we're shooting for, but that makes sense. On us, because it felt a little. The other thing, maybe I just didn't see it. We don't focus on it very much, but the higher education role in research and contribution to our state doesn't feel way of somehow referencing that.
Yeah, I will note that research does appear under the first bullet point of the vision statement. So
Yes.
again, this low sense future where well coordinated system of various providers fosters innovation, research, knowledge. State health is this sort of big list of activities or attributes and results from.
Yeah, thanks for drawing attention to that.
Also in the same vein as Craig has a question that doesn't need to be answered right now. And I do think the directness in this is different information. I do think it's improved substantially each time. I really like the directness of the mission statement, but as you get other feedback, I'm wondering if just about the phrase of advocating for change, which is less active than the other verbs of things we're doing, and realizing that we can't initiate change for all the colleges and universities, but I think we might find a stronger way of saying that or of applying it to policy, education policy, but I don't know. So look if that can be strengthened or expanded a little. Anything else, anybody online?
I'm happy to turn, I know we don't have a lot of time, but talk about the goals.
Yes,
section,
please.
contextual factors. So I took a lot from the conversation in December about goals and tried to reflect that in this short paragraph here. Fundamentally, I understood you to be saying, look, 40-40-20, the adult educational attainment goal, those aren't our real goals. Those are measures of progress, measures of, maybe the ideal attainment state of educational attainment. But our real goals are deeper. They're about the well-being of Oregon and its people, right? And reflected in part in that vision statement. So really all I've done in this section here is try to articulate that distinction, as Mr. Heyman said at the last meeting, the metrics are not the mission, right? So thinking about the 40-40-20 goal, the adult educational attainment goal, as in the language of our contractor, Horacio would call those, I think, outcomes. They're ways that you measure your progress quantitatively towards a deeper set of goals that this commission, I think, has spent quite a bit of time in its November and December meetings articulating: thriving economy, upward mobility, civic participation, community and individual well-being. So I think it'll be upon sort of a question for the planning team and others as we take next step. How much more do we want to do to really deepen that understanding and agreement around what those more fundamental goals are, understanding that we will continue to have these quantitative measures that are in statute, and we have others, our key performance measures. There are ways of assessing our progress towards these more profound goods that we hope expect higher education. So that's all I've done here, is just really try to reflect that distinction. And I think when this plan starts to look like a piece of paper, clear this is something we're talking about, the planning team has been with you. It may be a piece of paper, right, as opposed to a book or a small, novella, or you may see this. I expect you will see a distinction between our goals, which are probably in the vein of thriving economy and upward mobility, civic participation, community, et cetera, in our outcomes or our measures, which will be 40-40-20, which will be our educational, adult educational attainment goal. The language is going to be challenging because some of those are referred to as goals in the statute, but I really have heard from the commission that, that's insufficient. Sure, maybe call them goals, but then they're not actually the end that we're, that's not the point. So that's what I've tried to reflect here. Finally, this has been on your docket items since November with some updates. This section that describes key contextual factors. I would welcome not only reflection on what I've included here. It's this month you have footnotes for many of these, or links for many of these that you're interested in knowing, like what's the evidence for the fact that there's been a sharp increase in learners' mental health and wellness needs, for example, or there's declining public perception about the value of higher education. Chair Rowe talked about it at the outset. So you have some source material. I think there's much more. This was from the file that I've been keeping related to strategic planning, but it's perfectly. So I would welcome your thoughts about what could be missing from this list. This list will help to inform our surveys of the public and our partners in connection with this. We will be using some of these, asking, for example, the extent to which they believe that these are issues that a strategic plan should address. I think that's one way in which we'll be surveying and getting feedback from our partners. And I think we would be using this list to help identify the types of strategies that the commission should focus on. So again, this will be an evolving list, and whether it's today or in follow-up, really welcome your sense, including just readings, right? This could be the place where you say, actually, this is something the commission really needs to know about in order to effectively plan for the future of Oregon higher education. Maybe that leads to an added item on this list of key correctional factors. You've got here the emergence of AI as a tool and a challenge for higher ed, borrowing, so the sort of cost issue, the debt issue, the way in which that is impacting the students, and particularly female or racial minority completers. So these are subject to your consideration.
Yes, and if you usually don't go to footnotes to see the important links to read, please go back and read these. It's really sort of that's picked some of the best of the literature, the current literature. It is ever changing.
One theme that maybe would warrant inclusion on the list would be the cost of housing. We hear this as kind of a frankly heard today of the testimony. It's not something that necessarily that the commission has full agency over, but it's certainly a factor.
Anything else? Yes.
Just a quick one. I was thinking, probably in light of President BCC's challenge to us, and then the testimony of our hearing couple that we're being called to provide educational opportunities for the banding and historically designed to serve a certain age who's ready and able to apply themselves to a full-time education funding experience, and yet that demographic is shifting rapidly. Heard some of the challenges associated. I think that's a necessary thing for us to sort of capture the pieces in some of that injustice.
So this would be the emergence of part-time and older students as for our learners.
I think, yeah, it relates back to another conversation we had about the rest of the world is learning to adapt to a virtual world where time and place is important, and education has lagged, and it's an adaptation to that. And so there are people talk about maybe the progression isn't for college and work, maybe it's college and work together. What does that model look like for us? So just a broad category, but it's the same challenges of on a student population of the multi-served is not as as defined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Like I said, just the final thing I'll say, I'll be actually aside time to work tomorrow on there will be an online survey that will go out to the widest possible universe last November and see what thousand take that data to inform the planning process. There will also be a series of focus groups. I should have mentioned this in the process section of the document. I should have mentioned the fact that we'll you will get an opportunity as commissioners, not just members of the planning team, but all commissioners, to meet with the contractor in small groups privately to talk about these issues, right, and share inputs. You'll be getting that outreach soon. I set aside time tomorrow to work on this survey, and would welcome if you have ideas about ways that we should be going to the public, going to our partners, getting inputs, posing the questions. please let me know. I will also try to make sure that the members of the planning team have an opportunity to survey any of it. But we welcome anybody's thoughts about what we should be asking.
And thank you again, Commissioner Summer, Commissioner Ardo, Mr. Heyman, for agreeing to be in all of these sessions. I know it's not a light lift, but it's tremendously important to have commissioners as part of a constructive process. Yes, if you have any follow-up questions, then go to bed. And don't hesitate. I wasn't saying don't bring it to me. It's that men are knowledgeable about this now. Yes, Commissioner Viscount.
I might have come, not final, but I was looking up similar words to stability, because you mentioned stability. So I found durability or durable, able to exist for a long time without significant deterioration in quality or value.
Yeah, and welcome. Please, thank you. Yeah, please send them to anyone else. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on to the strategic activity reporting, and Veronica Dijon.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Rowe, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Veronica Dujon, and I'm the Director for Academic Policy and Authorization at the HECC. Today, I have before you the summaries, two-page summaries from the technical regional universities. The HECC is required to submit to the legislature an evaluation of each of the public universities every 2 years. As part of that evaluation submitted to the legislature, you, the Commission, may make recommendations regarding the ability of the university to meet academic goals and fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities. On the statute, these evaluations essentially are a report of the university's achievement of outcomes, measures of progress, goals, and targets, an assessment of the university's progress towards achieving the mission of all education beyond high school as described in statute, an assessment as to how well the establishment of a governing board at the university comports with the findings set forth in statute. This year, as I said, the 4 technical regional institutions are being evaluated: Oregon Tech, Western Oregon, Southern Oregon, and Eastern Oregon. And these evaluations rely heavily on a combination of institutional accreditation reports, self-assessments, and criteria originally jointly developed with the HECC. The reports focus on key areas of interest to the HECC that support higher education objectives, such as student success as measured by degree completion, access and affordability as measured by equity across socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, and regional groups, regional meaning urban, rural groups, academic quality and research, financial sustainability, continued collaboration across institutions, and adherence to legal responsibilities required of institutional boards of trustees. The material before you are these 2-page summary information pieces derived from the HECC data and institutional self-reports aligned with the major evaluative categories I mentioned. Institutional leaders have reviewed these summaries. The staff have incorporated some of the feedback we have received, feedback and suggestions, and based on the feedback from the Commission, we will prepare comprehensive, longer evaluations for the Commission meeting for consideration and adoption at the April meeting. So you have the 4 2-page summaries before you. And so this is just an informational presentation, although I am happy to take some questions. I anticipate there might be more questions with greater depth once you've seen the entire reports.
This is the same process we've used since beginning of time.
No,
Yes.
there was some modifications. We didn't originally prepare these summaries. These were requested probably probably 5 years ago, shortly after you started, I think, that support the commission in sort of getting an early preview of what will end up being a 25-page document. But this is the kind of essence of it, and we're bringing it to you before we're bringing it to the report. I get that right, Veronica?
That is correct. So these 2-page summaries are just a sneak preview, and you will notice that the financial sustainability sections are not yet populated. That's because my colleague Jim Pinkett in Public Finance and Capital does those every year for all 7 institutions. And so what he is working on will be identically represented in the reports that you will receive.
And this is all from their information, publicly available information. So any questions either about the process, which is well established, or about these initial summaries?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Mr. Devlin?
My question is, has there ever been, I have an echo here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we could hear you, and then you went away for a minute, and now you're back.
My question is, has there ever been an effort on affordability to develop some kind of index so that we can see in essence what the changes in costs are and what the impact is on students and parents with those increases? Given that all these institutions have pointed out very significant increases in the cost of attendance, both in tuition and fees, but also in the other costs that students have. They've all said they're committed to pursuing, federal and state aid for those students and institutional support. But there's nothing in here that really talks in essence about the affordability in terms of what the impact is on individual students and parents. Obviously, most of our financial aid is devoted to those most in need. And there's probably a question whether our financial aid, even in that area, whether it meets the need, which I don't believe it does. And obviously, there are some people that believe that people at the highest income, it doesn't matter what the cost is. But there's a great deal of students that fall in between those 2 categories, where the cost of attendance probably is exceeding their ability to pay. And it might be one of the reasons why we're seeing a decline in enrollment or a decline in interest in enrolling in post-secondary education. I was wondering if there's ever been any effort to have some kind of affordability index tied both to the cost and the impact on certain categories of students.
Thank you,
Veronica, can I take this?
Yes, Ben, thank you.
So the answer is yes, Commissioner Devlin. There is an index. We established it a number of years ago. We report for every college and university in the state, as well as for the state as a whole, the percentage of students for whom, according to this index, which again is something we created, the percentage of students for whom college is unaffordable. I think you make a really important and obvious point that these evaluations should refer to and incorporate that index. And so you saw the preview of the website. That index data for every college and university over time is one of the tabs on that visualization section that you'll be able to explore in depth. And again, and it shows some interesting trends in affordability, including, and we reported this to the commission last year, I believe, including the pretty notable increase in affordability that we picked up in the index for the first time ever in the 2020, 2021, 2022 period. I may not be getting the years exactly correct, Amy can correct on this, but nevertheless, we saw and reported to the commission, to the public, we talked to the legislature about it, this uptick in affordability, probably the result, and we have a paper on this that attempts to figure out why or explain why, and probably the result of increases to the Oregon Opportunity Grant and federal pandemic-related aid, a lot of which went to students, and a little bit of changing student enrollment patterns. So nevertheless, yes, the answer is we do have an index. I think it's a pretty good one. It's gotten some national attention. It's always hard with affordability because what I think is affordability, you may not think it is affordable, right? Like there isn't a standard definition of what's affordable, right? But we do have an index that we employ regularly with these institutions, and I think important feedback for Veronica and the team to look to ways to incorporate that in the final drafts of these reports.
And if you do that, thank you, Commissioner Devlin, for the question. If you do that, then it seems like the affordability section of the report will have more of an evaluative measure as opposed to simply reporting data from the institution. So there's a bit in these reports of kind of an arm's distance, like I know it's not being passed through, it takes a lot of work, but almost in that way. And I think especially on measures like that, the evaluation skills you all bring to it really matters. So, yes, Commissioner Ham.
Thank you.
I don't know what this question is for. Maybe really appreciate you reminding us of the index, and I think
Madam Chair.
we disagree on whether academic measures our understanding of affordability is longitudinal value critically important. However, measure better or worse. It's great to know that for a variety of reasons we made progress. I think we may see certainly see a change, hopefully in regards to our shift to the student need index, student affordability index, better level, and how important that they choose to fund. May see some change there. It's probably way too early to think about this, but it appears to me that the purpose of this report might be in some way related to the purpose of proposed legislation 4125. I'm just wondering if we do some advanced thinking about, I don't know if that legislation has any chance of passing, but if it does, there's some way of sort of advanced thinking about that as we consider the way in which we construct our reports. Probably too early, but.
Yeah, I think we've understood. We've certainly approached the evaluations. We have not approached the evaluations that Veronica is presenting the summaries for today from the standpoint of how did the governance change impact results and the experience of students, which is the central question of 4125. It's asking, how was the governance change good? And the evaluations instead, I think they ask a different question. They ask how well are these institutions performing relative to a bunch of kind of goals that we've set out for them, and they've set out for themselves. So that's, I think there's a relationship, and it's certainly working.
I'm just reading. I mean, I don't know pretty specific how by statute. How well is the establishment of a governing board at the university level? Just saying, yeah.
I think there's definitely that statute did reflect an intent from the legislature to use these evaluations to sort of measure whether things were going well. But I think what we have not attempted, maybe it was the intent, but what we have not attempted is to sort of assess that relative to an alternative. Right, which is what I think the 4125 legislation is saying. What would the world be like if we had not done this kind of change? Would it be better?
I appreciate
this. What do we know about the progress of, or what do we know about the survivability of 4125?
Yeah, it's, as Kyle mentioned, it's receiving a continuation of the volunteering meeting on Tuesday, later this afternoon, and then we'll likely go to a work session and on the process. I don't know that we have a good sense of whether it will pass. I think it is very plausible that it will pass, given the fact that it's just asking the legislative staff to conduct a study. So it's not a very costly bill. It's a very program. It doesn't have staff positions. It's not the kind of thing like it for those types of reasons.
Madam Chair.
This week, it seems like a very reasonable thing to do.
Commissioner Devlin?
Yeah, Madam Chair. I just wanted to state I was aware of the other measure that has been developed. I don't actually believe that that other measure would adequately address the information I think the commission should have. The other thing is you could have an increased affordability is a relative matter. If you had something that was affordable for 60% of the students, but not for 40%, and you increased to 62%, that would be an increase in affordability, which would not necessarily have an affordable system.
Can I ask for clarification, Commissioner Devlin, because I think we would look, and we have depicted a shift from 60% of students experiencing college and university as affordable to 62%. We have characterized that as an improvement in affordability. Are you suggesting that that's a sort of mischaracterization?
No, I can't. To be honest, I have a very poor audio connection.
Okay.
And I'm getting about every third word. So I'll hold this discussion back for a different time, but Ben, we can talk about this sometime offline.
Okay, very good. We'll do that.
Chair Rowe, Commissioners, thank you, Ben, for that description. I also just want to draw to the Commissioner's attention that in the snapshots for each of the public universities and community colleges, it does appear every time the snapshots are updated, that affordability index. So over time, it's possible to see changes, although conversation about what exactly we mean by affordability might not be the same for each individual, for each person's understanding or comprehension.
Right, but you do present it longitudinally also. Okay. Okay, thank you. That's good and helpful discussion. Thank you very much, Ron. Okay, I think the next item is, yes, funding. Thank you. Ariel? Kyle? There you go.
I
said he would wait.
I think that Kyle addressed this as part of his legislation.
Yeah, so, I think that's right, Guthrie. I think what I think Kyle, Tom is on leave for family, he's out for family issues. And Kyle addressed. He must have.
I knew I was talking about.
I don't know how to say.
He hears all. Are we up to date, sir, on the concept? We are we?
Yeah, Chair Rowe, Commission members, Dan Kyle Thomas, Director of Legislative Policy Affairs. This is the first policy in budget development. I'm out of breath, this is the first policy development cycle, really, that the Governor Pro-Tem has had the opportunity to fully and completely engage in since her election. And as such, she and her office have developed different processes and procedures for how that cycle is to begin. They are different than what we previously engaged in under Governor Brown and prior governors. And so, at this point, I would say that we are perhaps a little less far along than we traditionally are this time in the cycle. Usually this time in the cycle, we are beginning the process of engagement with external stakeholders around very rough ideas and concepts. Right now, however, we are doing some of that initial work with the governor and team. And so I would expect that the public rollout of this will occur probably at the commission's next meeting, and we will get increasing level of detail at further meetings thereafter. Still looking my breath. As we have just gotten the legislative concepts sort of initial list back from her office today, it would be really premature for me to start to detail for you exactly where we are relative to concepts because that would jump ahead of some of the, I think, internal staff discussions that still need to take place. Relative to where we are in terms of policy option packages, we are still awaiting that initial response from the governor's office. They are conducting a statewide review of all of the potential policy option budget ideas that agencies have submitted, presumably to sort of gauge that against her own list of priorities, as well as roughly against the maximum amount of available state resources that they will be able to assume are for use in the 25-27 cycle. So for that piece of things right now, we're essentially on pause until we get the results of that review from her office. In terms of sort of further process of deadlines, we will likely owe, just based on past cycles, completed budget options and an agency request budget to DAS and the governor's office this summer, and we will owe legislative concepts, finalized legislative concepts in their drafted statutory form to DAS and the governor's office later this fall or very early winter for introduction. Other than that, we're sort of ourselves waiting and seeing what the governor's office says.
So we will have an update in April. Not for approval or not even for drafting legislation by then, but at least her reaction to the concepts.
Yeah, and by then, because some of that reaction on the policy side has already occurred, by then we will have probably a reasonable first cut of a list for you to take a look at by April.
Very good. Yes.
One of the things that I've been hearing just very recently, that as a result of the tribal student grant, the relationship between the universities and Oregon tribes is blossoming, and which is a really good outcome. And it presents some challenges with regard to interface around responses to workforce needs, as well as content in the curricula for Indigenous issues. And it's not an issue for any one institution because that relationship seems to be growing through all of the institutions in the state, and they're figuring out how to be responsive to a greater number of students. And so I just want to put it on the radar, and I don't know whether it's a workforce issue for a possible talk, or whether it might have to do with the funding formula or some other way to respond to that issue. But I'm encouraging the presidents that I'm talking to bring that forward as a legislative adjustment to a new relationship with the 9 tribes of Oregon.
Thank you. And if you'll consider that also, Colin, I think letting the legislators know the effects of this, it was such an important change. And so if the effects are starting to be more wide ranging, if there's a way to let the legislators know that, that would be wonderful. Just informational.
Yeah, so we have shared with legislators that the most initial results we have from the travel grant were quite remarkable, and I can share that in terms of the very introductory level thinking we've done so far on COPS LCs for 2025, the idea of further engagement and strengthening relationships through policy and through budgeting with tribes is certainly a topic that is.
Okay, anything else? Thank you for coming back. Just to be clear, you did not run for the county.
I did not.
Thank you. Okay, now Jim Pickard, this will be an action item, community college funding distribution formula.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Jim Pinkers with the Office of post-secondary financing capital. We do have an action item for your consideration this morning. We are proposing the use of a quality growth factor of 5% within the community college funding model for the current biennium. The community college funding distribution model, as you may be aware, is based on full-time equivalent student enrollment. The model includes a growth management component to prevent erosion in the level of total funding per FTE. And then to further ensure sufficient funding per FTE, the commission has the authority to set a quality growth factor to increase or decrease the number of full-time equivalent students counted for funding purposes within the formula. So two mechanisms to address funding per FTE. Based on a collaborative conversation with the colleges over the last few months, they are expecting some enrollment growth, as they've seen in this fall, to continue into next fall. And so we're joining with them in recommending the quality growth factor be set at 5% for the current biennium. Doing so will allow for an increase in the number of full-time student loans to be funded in the formula, thereby accommodating their expected enrollment growth. So we recommend approving the recommendation. I'll ask for questions.
Thank you. Questions for Jim? Or for Greg, who knows this? Excuse me, Commissioner Hayes. You gonna ask questions or answer them?
I apologize.
No, please.
Jim, just a quick question. What is the time for that?
It said it's 0, and I'm glad you asked, because we have, at least in the short time I've been here in the last 5 years, we have not chosen to use this particular mechanism. So this will be the first time really we're using it to manage that growth.
Any other questions? Motion, please. So moved. Thank you. Second? Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. We'll see you later. Will we see you later this afternoon?
If you want to.
It's so much fun. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go back to the University of Oregon program approval if we can. Are you ready to do that? Answer?
Tell you what.
Remember, that's on item 6.0, and Mr. Heyman asked if that was a new category of degrees or programs.
I mean, I think the answer is yes. It is similar, our staff reports that it is similar to an EDD or a doctorate, an education doctorate. They allow the graduates to serve in leadership roles in schools that do not require, so the EDS, EDD, allow graduates to serve in leadership roles in schools that do not require a doctorate. It is often a requirement for working as a superintendent in many states outside of Oregon. This EDS degree will only be offered in conjunction with a professional administrator license at the University of Oregon. It is in front of the commission because it is a new degree at the University of Oregon. So just as any other degree, new academic degree program is presented to the commission for approval. It is an emerging kind of type of graduate degree. It's not a certificate, it's an emerging type of graduate degree designed to sort of sit between a master's and a doctorate. And it appears to me that it will allow some candidates for leadership in K-12 districts, the superintendent to qualify for positions that historically they've really needed to have a full doctorate degree to be. So this is a sort of sub-doctorate, but related to that.
They could just change the requirements for applying for a particular job.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate your highlighting its relationship to the certification for superintendents. That helps.
And then
Clark offers this program, and so there is demand for it in the state, and there's no public community college or university currently offers a similar program. So it seems like this would be filling a need that is not currently.
And I don't, by asking this or remarking this, I don't mean to lump them all together, but we also saw in the consent items with the community colleges, a lot of two-year certificates are going down to 1 year. We talk about certificates and changes when we get to the career and technical education. And so I don't think there's any one meaning or fact to draw from a lot of degrees are changing. But if there is something that is a commission that we either need to know more about in terms of all these degree changing, and in some ways it's to open up a wider universe, certain certificates, both at the entry level of 1 year of technical training and at the pre-PhD level. But in any event, I just don't know if there are any implications of any of that at some point we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I believe, I was having this conversation with Commissioner Hagan on the break, but believe that this could be understood in the same, as part of the same movement that you see in those community college certificate 1 year and shorter than 1 year certificate programs, where colleges and universities are trying to create options for students to complete and enter career more quickly, right? And if the program that used to be 2 years at the community college can instead be done in 1 and adequately prepare students for that career path, then colleges are very interested to see that. And I believe that this is likely sort of associated with that same general movement of creating options that may not require the full, what historically have required the full doctorate degree for education leadership, for example. It's reflected in this slightly shorter.
Yes.
Is this specifically just for U of O, or do you see that it would migrate to other institutions?
So Commissioner Yamasaki, I can't answer the question about to what extent this may be migrating, although Commissioner Coder pointed out that it's not won't be the first in Oregon. So it sounds like it's already that migration may be occurring already. That seems likely to continue, especially if I'm correct, that it's could be a more attractive option to some students. What you are being asked to approve is a specific program at a specific university, and that's always the case with these programs. Case by case, institution by institution.
Okay, are we ready for a motion on this? I am. Motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Second. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mama. Any opposition? Thank you very much. We are adjourned for lunch until 1 p.m. We'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.